Hi guys, welcome to my channel Lush Gardener. I hope you guys are fine and are safe. So guys, a lot of you have been asking me questions related with string of bananas, how to take care of it. So I thought I'll quickly make a video on it. So let me introduce you to Rapunzel of my garden. She is my 3-year-old string of bananas. So generally this plant is referred to as string of bananas, but the scientific name is Senecio Radicans. Yes, this is a variety of Senecio, the same one that belongs to string of pearls. Now guys, string of pearls is slightly delicate as compared to string of bananas. String of bananas are much more stronger. Now guys, talking about the light conditions, these are trailing succulents. They require bright indirect light. They also will do well in morning direct sunlight. So if you have a location wherein you receive good direct morning sunlight for 5 to 6 hours, you can probably move it over there. Now guys, if you do not receive morning direct sunlight, it's absolutely fine. You can even grow this trailing succulent in indirect bright light, but you have to ensure that the light is really bright. Now if they do not receive a lot of light, they will start to stretch. Yes, even my Rapunzel over here is starting to stretch because the direction of the sun has changed, so it doesn't receive a lot of direct bright light or indirect bright light. So very soon I will be moving her to direct sunlight after acclimation. Now string of bananas will also grow well under grow lights. If that is the last option you have, they will also do well under indirect bright light as well. Now guys, talking about the soil, string of bananas require a well draining soil mix. I already have a video on soil mix, so the same soil mix I tend to use for my string of bananas as well. The soil has to be loose, porous and well draining. Talking about watering, string of bananas are drought tolerant succulents. They have very low water needs. Now guys, if you're going to ask me when should we water, that completely depends upon you, because there are a lot of factors that determine when you need to water your succulents, basically when the soil is completely dry. Apart from it, your season, your climate, your environment also plays a major role when you water your succulents. But the rule of thumb remains the same. When the soil is completely dry, that is when you will go ahead and do a complete watering. Now in case if you're confused, what you can do is you can wait. If you tend to see that there are wrinkles on your string of banana leaves, you'll start noticing there would be wrinkling on the leaves, then that indicates that the succulent is thirsty and it's time to give some water. Now talking about temperatures, because string of bananas, the Senecio variety tends to belong to South Africa, so they are used to a little dry and warm climate, so they will pretty much do well at your place. But guys, ensure that you do not keep them closer to a heater or do not keep them close to an air conditioning vent. They do not like that cold draft, so ensure that you keep them away. Even if you notice that your city or your place, the temperatures are rising, it is getting very extreme, probably it's getting too cold or probably it's getting too hot, then you'll have to protect the succulent from these extreme climates. Now guys, talking about the pot size, usually they prefer to be in a smaller pot. Remember guys, smaller the pot, less soil, faster the soil will dry. If you're going to use a bigger pot, then it's going to have more soil and it is going to take more time for the soil to dry, which could lead to root rot, because they don't like to be sitting in wet soil for a really long time, just like other succulents. Now guys, talking about repotting, these guys do not require a regular repotting. In fact, most of my string of bananas have been sitting in the pot for almost 2 to 3 years and I haven't even repotted them. I will be showing you few of my string of bananas which have been sitting in a very tiny pot and I haven't even repotted them for a really long time. So usually they prefer to be root bounded in the soil or in the pot, and at times they tend to put out aerial roots, so usually it's not much of an issue. And over that, what I tend to do is whenever they tend to trail and whenever they tend to get really long, apart from this Rapunzel, others I tend to trim them. Whenever I tend to see that there is an aerial root, I just cut it below it and then I just keep propagating them. So it's very easy to take care of them. They don't have much watering needs, they do not have much repotting issues, so they do very well as a house plant. Another best part about string of bananas is that they are not prone to any pests like mealybugs or aphids or scale insects. But in case if you happen to notice, because remember guys, at the end of the day, they are in a very different environment. they are susceptible to pest, because at times you tend to get succulents from outside, and then those insects can attack the string of bananas. But usually I never had any issues with any pest or scale insects on string of bananas. They are usually away from all these. But in case if you happen to notice it, then you'll have to treat it. The early the better. You can either use a Q-tip and clean it off with rubbing alcohol or with the hand sanitizer, whichever works out really well. But guys, please don't spray any kind of oil substance on the succulents, especially neem oil. Please do not spray neem oil on the succulents, because a lot of people have said that they have lost their succulents by spraying neem oils. So just be careful. All you can do is just use the Q-tip and just clean the leaves. It's much easy because these guys don't grow very bushy, so it becomes much easy to notice if there is any pest attack. Now, talking about disease, usually they do not get any disease apart from if you're going to overwater them. If the plant is sitting in a pool of water, then definitely you will end up with root rot. So ensure that you do not overwater it. Whenever you tend to see that the soil is bone dry or completely dry, only then go ahead and water it. In case if you're not able to understand that, then you can check for the leaves. If you see any wrinkles, then water it, but please do not overwater it. It's always better to keep your succulents on the underwatered side rather than the overwatered side. Now, talking about fertilizers, I personally do not use fertilizers for any of my succulents, including her. I don't put in any of the nutrients because they prefer their soil to be laced with nutrients. They do quite well. But if you want to add any fertilizers, you can do it during their growing period. Now guys, let's quickly talk about how to propagate string of bananas. As I said, you can either go with stem cuttings or you can go with leaf propagation. Now guys, we are beginners. We want something to be very, very fast. So I would advise don't go with the leaf propagation. It is going to take a slightly longer period of time compared to stem cuttings. So if you want to do a stem cutting, you can go ahead and cut any part of the stem. But if you have aerial roots, I would always say is chop that part which has aerial roots, because with that 80% of your work will be done, because the aerial roots are already present. The only thing that you need to do is let the stem callus, and once the stem is calloused, you can then go ahead and put it into the soil. We do not need to wait for a really long time because the aerial roots are already present. So after 2 or 3 days, you can go ahead and start watering your plant. Again guys, do not overwater it. Only when the soil is completely dry, you will go ahead and do watering. Now, another very important thing, because a lot of people have been talking to me about this particular plant and they have always happened to kill the plant when they get it. A lot of times when I seen the pictures, I seen that the plant is hardly 2 or 3 inches in size. Now guys, when the plant is in such a small size, usually it will not survive. It will not be able to get adapted to the new environment. So whenever you are getting a cutting from a friend or from your neighbor, or even if you are getting it in mail, probably your friend is in another city and is sending a cutting, ensure you tell them. So you can probably tell them to send a slightly bigger cutting, probably something that's bigger than 7 to 8 inches with more number of or maximum number of leaves. Now guys, this is only if you're getting a cutting. Usually when you tend to buy the succulent from a seller, they will send you with roots. Then there is no issue if the succulent is small. But if you are getting a cutting, then you have to ensure that the cutting is large enough that it can get acclimated and adjusted to the new environment. And because if it has maximum leaves on the stem, that means that the succulent can store a lot of water, which means it can easily get acclimated and get adjusted in the new environment without getting dehydrated. So guys, this is one of the points you need to remember, because I have been seeing a lot of pictures wherein the string of banana cuttings are hardly 2 inches or 3 inches. I've even seen pictures where there are hardly 1 or 2 leaves on the stem. So such type of cuttings will not survive, because the plant will get dehydrated or the plant might get rotted and it won't be able to get adjusted and acclimated in the new environment. So here are some other pots of my string of bananas. Now you might have seen this pot in my last video. The video was posted long back, so wherein I had done some cuttings on this because it was trailing a lot. Now guys, the same rule applies for these guys as well. Usually when we tend to do a beheading, as I said, that there won't be a continuous growth. In fact, the growth will be around the cut part. The same rule applies for this as well. So whenever you do a cutting, the cut part will not have a continuous growth, but there will be new growth around the cut. As you can see in this video over here in this clip. You can see how well it's doing. You can see there has been a lot of new growth that has been around the cut part. Now the soil also, what I'm using for these guys is basically aquarium sand with a little bit of garden soil. So there is almost 80% of aquarium sand with a little bit of garden soil. And here is another pot, the same soil mix. Now this cutting was added a couple of weeks back, and you can see it is doing quite well. It has adapted very well in the new pot. And another thing, if you have noticed guys, the new growth on these string of bananas, if you tend to notice, these are much more compact. The reason is because they tend to receive a good amount of direct morning sunlight for 5 to 6 hours. That's the reason why you will be able to see that the new growth is more compact compared to the older growth, because they have been receiving a good amount of direct morning sunlight. So guys, I hope that this video on a string of bananas was helpful to you. If it was, please hit the like button. If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing to it. Until then, take care, stay safe, and keep propagating.